Why, hello, everybody. Welcome to Ask Aaron. It's a good day to ask Aaron some questions. So here we go. I'm weird. These questions are asked by members of Hill City Church or on the internet. As always, the answers are mine, not the church's. I hope they agree. Would love for you to join in the comment section and continue the conversation. Great questions today. All sorts of good stuff. Here we go. Would you say Jesus' first coming was a disappointment for many? And will such disappointment be widespread when he comes again? I gave a message that centered on the second coming, when Jesus will return to do all sorts of great things. You can watch that message, hillcityhudson.org/media, Facebook, YouTube, or the app. Lots of places. But anyway, I would say this about this question. Yes, the first coming of Jesus was a disappointment for many because they assumed wrongly that the Messiah would come and restore the nation of Israel to political promise and power. And they expected a king in the sense of an earthly king that would reign and give them power over the other nations that surrounded them. So yes, to a lot of people in that time, I'm sure Jesus' first coming was a disappointment. And even to the point of, Jesus being crucified, I'm sure many of his disciples and followers felt disappointment until the resurrection. But even following the resurrection, those who wanted Jesus to be a different kind of king than he was and then was promised, would have been disappointed. Will such disappointment be widespread when he comes again? In the sense that there will be those who are disappointed that they were wrong, that, they thought he didn't exist, or he wasn't God, or he wasn't the way to heaven, those kinds of things. Yeah, I guess they'll be disappointed. That's not a laughing matter. It's a funny concept to think about them as being disappointed. There will not be widespread disappointment again from his followers, as we will be excited and happy to live in a new heaven and a new earth, saved from our sin by Jesus' death and resurrection. So it's kind of how I will answer that question. Yeah, people will be disappointed because they're going to spend eternity separated from God. And it's going to be a bummer in a lot of ways. So, why is God waiting so long for the second time for Jesus to return? The typical answer to this is he can wait as long as he wants. He's in charge. Second, the more time there is for us to share the gospel, the more people that will, hear the message and receive it and come to a saving relationship with Jesus. So those are kind of my two answers. But, as Christians, we believe that God's timing and God's, involvement in our world is divine and it is perfect. And we just are sort of waiting for that return because stuff on this side of new heaven and new earth is sinful and fallen. And obviously, we want for it to happen. And so does God. But it'll happen in his time. Why is he waiting so long? I don't know. Maybe that'll be a great question to ask him when we get there. Why did you wait so long? But obviously, everyone, needs and deserves the opportunity to hear the gospel. And I think that has something to do with it, that God's plan is, for all nations to be able to hear and share the story of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection so that people can be saved. And there are still places and nations in the world where that story is not quite being told in the way that it is around here. So that might have something to do with it. But God's waiting so long for the second time for Jesus to come back because he wants to. And that should be good enough for us. Was Jesus in a fraternity with all this Alpha and Omega talk? No. Alpha and Omega are Greek letters, represent the beginning and the end of the Greek alphabet. And the reason that fraternities use those is because they wanted to differentiate themselves from other groups and other clubs, and they thought that using Greek letters would make them sound intelligent and be impressive. Jesus is referred to as the Alpha and the Omega because the New Testament was written in ancient Greek, most of it. Some of it, of course, written in Aramaic, but translated into Greek and then translated into German and English and all that. So that's why. It's just the beginning and the end of the alphabet. It could have been I am the A and the Z, but English was not the language that was used. Beginning and the end is what that represents, and fraternities use it to try to distinguish themselves, which is kind of funny with what frats and sororities are most well known for now. But anyway, Beta, Sigma, I don't know. I'm just saying letters now. And I wasn't in a fraternity or a sorority. And I'm honestly not sure which one's which. One's for guys and one's for girls. I think frats are for guys and sororities are for girls. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I could be wrong. Don't ask Aaron that question. Will we still celebrate Christmas after the second coming of Jesus? This question was asked by my friend John, who I've referenced before. John, I don't think so, because we'll be in heaven, or new heaven and new earth, celebrating Jesus all the time, worshiping Jesus all the time. So will we still celebrate Christmas? We'll probably be more concerned and obsessed with the second coming than the first one. But, who knows? Maybe we'll still celebrate Christmas. But I can tell you this, we aren't going to celebrate it the way we celebrate it now in America with trees and presents and all that kind of stuff. It'll be different because we will be celebrating our King who came and was crucified and who rose again and came again. So I don't think we'll be celebrating Christmas the way most people do here in America. But it's a good question. Last question, a little bit heavier than some of these have been. But are we currently experiencing the direct result of Jacob, or the nation of Israel's transgression? Is what we see in today's Israeli conflict with Palestinians a result of the nation of Israel's transgression? And what I want to say about this is, in the Old Testament, Jacob and Israel are names of a person. They're also used to reference the entire nation of Israel. And there are tribes, and they split up and come back together. There are 12 tribes, and some of them go this way, and some of them go that way, north and south, and good kings and bad kings, whatever. Sometimes they're together, sometimes they're apart. But what basically happens is the nation of Israel is often swayed by idols and religious beliefs from the neighboring countries, and they sort of abandon their faith in God and set up these sort of mix religions where they worship the God of their youth and the God of their neighbors, or the God of their youth or the God of their ancestors and the gods of their captors when they are in exile. And so the truth of it is that Jesus' life, death, and resurrection is payment for all of the sins of mankind. And so we are not still being held to some sort of sin standard, or not being held guilty or found guilty of something that other people did a long time ago. But, however, the situation remains the same. There are people who could be and were created to be a part of God's family who have walked away, right? One of the ways that Jacob's transgression, which is a reference to Micah chapter 1, is described is that Jacob, or the nation of Israel, walked away from God. The physical person Jacob at times walked away from God, and the nation of Israel walked away from God. And the repercussions of that was that God left them to their own devices, and that involved wars with neighboring countries and people who believed differently than them, and all sorts of really just challenging negative stuff. And so what I will say is, we are not being held or found guilty because of decisions made by people from the nation of Israel, thousands of years ago, but we are still living in a world where God's potential family, or people who could be a part of God's family because they were created to be a part of God's family, have chosen to walk away from God. And despite knowing and hearing the truth, continue to live outside of God's plan and purpose for their lives. Now, please, I am not in any way an expert on the conflict in Israel or in Gaza, or what I'm not speaking to is the political situation happening in the Middle East. Okay, what I am saying is that the reason for that conflict is the same reason for any conflict, and that is our sin in walking away from God, in choosing our own things, our own desires, our own passions. We create false gods in money and power and politics and all of these things. And in situations where we should choose God, we walk away and choose something or someone else. And that results in conflict. It results in conflict in relationships. It results in conflict in your communities. It results in conflicts politically and with, armies and wars and all of these things, because people are not doing what God called them to do. And in the Old Testament, it's what God called people to do. And in the New Testament, it's what Jesus called us to do, right? There are two commandments that Jesus says define all the others that have been given to the Israelites in the law, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. When we fail to do those things, when we walk away from God, when we place something else above him, it's going to spell trouble. And so, the conflict that's happening in the Middle East, the conflict that's happening in Russia and Ukraine, the conflict that's happening between two political parties here in our country, all of those conflicts are a direct result of people placing other things above their faith and their belief in God, walking away from him and choosing something or someone else as their God or their idol. And it's keeping them from doing the things that we are called to do as followers of God or followers of Jesus. And so until we rectify those situations, until we turn away from our sin and back to God, there will continue to be conflict. There will continue to be broken relationships. There will continue to be wars and poverty and all of these awful things that happen in our world. And so we are not experiencing the direct result of the nation of Israel's transgression from thousands of years ago, but in some cases, Israel is used now to refer to the entirety of God's church, right? All those who are Christian and follow Jesus. And so as the nation of Israel politically experiences conflict, so does Israel in the sense of God's kingdom here on earth is experiencing conflict with the world because the world has walked away from God, and in turn, we also walk away from God in ways. And when we do, God says, I love you. I've made a way for you to be in relationship with me. But when you walk away, because I love you so much, I'm going to let you choose what it is because, love requires a choice. And so when we choose not God, conflict comes into our lives, and it's responsible for so much of what's wrong with our world today. And the way to fix it is to enter into a relationship with Jesus, to repent from our sin, to turn from it, and to live the way he created us and enables us to live because of his life, death, and resurrection and the Holy Spirit, which lives inside our hearts. All right? Whew. Lots of great questions. Really enjoyed those this week. As always, I want to say thank you for asking them. You can catch us. Last message of the series, Jesus was, is, and will be, on Facebook, YouTube, or our app or website, hillcityhudson.org/media this coming Sunday, 10 a.m. You can join us in person. And then Max will be preaching on Labor Day, and we'll kick off a whole new series for fall kickoff on September 8th. So thanks as always for asking Aaron. We'll talk to you next time. Have a great weekend.